Red light going.
Are we going to sleep early or just coming in late? Sometimes it's the
both.
latter.
It's both, brother. It's both.
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin presented by Progressive Insurance. College football chatter with Heather Dinich, our playoff insider, coming up in 15 minutes. She'll be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. It's a big one because the first playoff rankings have come out. If you were ranking the top teams in the NFL, sure, some people like Key in the real rankings might have Kansas City at top. But if you're a Pittsburgh fan, the Steelers certainly would merit some consideration. As you well know, they're the league's lone undefeated team. They're 10-0. They got the Ravens tomorrow night in the third of 3 Thanksgiving games for all of us sports fans to watch. You might recall not too long ago, Mike Tomlin was trying to tell everybody, listen, we are seriously not overlooking the Jacksonville Jaguars. This isn't the Big Ten and the MAC. This is the National Football League. Next thing you know, it's 27-3. Mike Tomlin going right back at it. The stump speech, 10-0 against the fading Ravens, but you'd never know it from Mike T.
You know, we're desperate too. We're all desperate to win this week. I'd imagine they view us in the same way, or I'd imagine it would behoove them to do so. That's our attitude each and every week. We respect everyone and respect the level of desperation that everyone has and the urgency that everyone has, and we step into the stadium ready to match it.
So those are the words of Mike Tomlin. Key, Jay, you're in a point now where they're undefeated. There have been many other teams that have hit the 13-0 mark and said the goal is winning the Super Bowl, resting starters. We've clinched the 1 seed. Clearly, at this point, Kansas City is breathing down Pittsburgh's neck. It's just a 1-game difference between the two. So that is to sort of at least initially factor into how Mike Tomlin's going to treat here the next 6 games.
And that's the beauty about it in terms of the NFL kind of getting it right the way that they changed the format. Now, all the way, Pittsburgh has to finish. They can't afford to have a hiccup anywhere along the lines if they want the number 1 seed. Now, in any traditional year outside the truncated year that
favorite word
that we're going through right now with the season, the number 1 seed obviously would be majorly important. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily know how important it is. You would like to have it, but how important it is right now, because in certain stadiums, there's 0 fans, in certain stadiums, very minimum fan base. So you still would like to play at home because of the environment. You're used to certain things, the lights, the lack of travel, the lights in the stadium, the colors in the stadium. Believe it or not, that stuff is big for certain athletes. And so he knows the importance of it. And I've always said it from day one, if Pittsburgh has a chance to go undefeated within reason of not screwing something up, they're going to do it. Because you got a Hall of Fame quarterback that would like to try to do some things that others haven't, and you got a head coach that would like to prove some things that others haven't.
It just feels like every time I hear Mike Tomlin talk, you know, usually, Key, when you hear a coach talk, it's somewhat demure, or it's like, hey, we're planning, it's strategic. Mike Tomlin sounds like a player. Like he sounds like one of us in a locker room. Like you feel it's like one of those motivational, I'm always angry, I always have something to prove. And I just, it feels like it has me ready to run through a wall. And Key, you said it, playing for something. Like regardless of whether, you know, there's advantages that come along with being number 1 overall seed, having something to play for and get your team behind, that's what you need. And that's what the Steelers have in their head coach.
You know what's so funny is that I don't know if you know Mike Tomlin or not, or ever met him or anything, but he coached with me down in Tampa. He was our defensive back coach. And what you see at the podium is what you're going to see at the dinner table tomorrow night when he has dinner with his family. Everything is like kind of sort of intense to a degree. I didn't play defensive back. I played wide receiver. And Coach T would have conversations on the side. Boy, I'd be like, you're not coaching me right now. I don't play your position, but everything is just like you see it. Everything is just that. And so it's important to him to send that message to his team to know that we are not letting up on the Ravens. We got something ahead of us, and we need to tackle that.
I mean, they may not even played a game, though. I mean, considering what's happening with the Ravens and all the COVID reports that we're having coming out of their camp, it could be fascinating.
No question. You got Ingram on the shelf. You got J.K. Dobbins on the shelf. You're probably not going to have Brandon Williams for the 2nd straight game. Keyshawn, J. Will, Zubin, presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Let me ask you this. Take me inside the mind of a player. Tony Dungy, who has been on the show a couple of different times, the Hall of Fame coach, he had an opportunity for perfection, opted against it. The Denver Broncos got out to a 13-0 start a little over 20 years ago. That was stymied, although they were probably going for it. as a player, understanding there is a long-term goal in mind. We saw the Pats go 16-0 in the regular season. As a player, understanding one goal comes before the other, 16-0 first possible Super Bowl, is there something about you that says, do you know the list of people that have participated in an undefeated regular season? Yes, the final goal is a Lombardi, but if we can get there with those 72 Dolphins that were perfect, those Pats, is there something there inside the mind of a player that says, I know there's an ultimate goal, but man, this would be so special, Coach, if we could do this?
Well, I would say within reason, right? It depends on what your head coach's mindset is on top of what's going on around the team. Do we need to rest the team? Who's hurt? Who's nicked up? Who's banged up? Is our second string quarterback Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, are they capable of winning that 15th, 16th game for us? And we can rest up Ben. Will it hurt us if Kansas City all of a sudden loses another game or two more games and wind up being in another situation where we got 2 to 3 games up on them? Maybe we rest our guys, and then if we get it, we get it. But the fact that we're in this pandemic and this season is the way it is, we've got to continue to move forward. It's all different circumstances. I go back to the New England Patriots when they decided to go for 16-0. I was at the game when they went undefeated and they hung whatever they hung up on the Giants.
Giants.
Yeah, I was at that game.
Thanks.
I was there in the stands, in the stands watching the game. Their mission was different. They were out to prove to people that they were not in a Spygate, Deflategate, cheating scandals, that we could do it regardless. And they proved to everybody that they were not doing those sort of things by going 16-0, even though people thought that they had to cheat to win. So every situation is a little different. I mean, that's just what it is. Records were on the line. Moss 20-something touchdowns, Tom Brady. I mean, it was just a different situation. And I think for Pittsburgh, like I said, you got a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. I'm sure he would like to go 16-0. And I'm sure Coach Tomlin would like to go 16-0 within reason, as long as everybody can stay healthy.
I mean, depending upon what happens with the Chiefs, you're exactly right. If it comes down to the wire, your last 2 games are against the Colts and then the Browns. I mean, the Colts have that formidable defense, and the Browns are going to have to pound it out, and Bud Dupree and company have to do their thing with that defensive line to stop the running game of Cleveland. But Key, here, it is interesting when you start hearing coaches, right? Because one of the things I learned from Coach K, and we never went undefeated, but we did win a chip, is that you try to get your players lost in each game at a time, the game within the game, possessions in the game. And I do feel like ultimately the one thing that we just talked about Mike Tomlin being so good at motivating his players, it does feel like this team wants to prove something different. Now, whether that leads to, because this is situational, right, them being 15-0 if this game gets canceled, it's one thing. But ultimately, you do feel like they're playing for something, I know this is a cliche that we say, bigger than themselves, though, right? Doesn't it feel like there's something to prove with the Steelers? The whole year, everybody in all the ranking, the Chiefs are better. It just feels like they're underrated, even though they're undefeated.
Well, their style is underrated. It's the style. When you have, it's almost like anything, right? You got one car, I got another car. We get into the same place. Your car may be shinier and nicer than mine, but I got 4 wheels. I'm still getting there, right? I mean, I'm still getting there. And so that's how you look at it when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that they're driving a big old Buick, and Jay Will, he's driving one of them fancy Lamborghinis with the doors up. But guess what? We both going to end up at the restaurant. You might get there 5 minutes before me, but we both going to end up at the same place. That's why you think about it that way.
Evan, thank you for correcting me. I'm wearing the Duke jacket, and I meant to say cliche, but I say cachet.
I just let it
go off the Pluto. But Evan likes to send jabs from the, that's cool. I respect it.
I said the same thing in my mind.
I got cachet, and that was a cliche.
I said the same thing. I'm not worried about the guy from Duke. I think he's smart enough to know that
I meant to say
he botched the word. We all do it here and there.
Indeed, no problem.
Somebody on Twitter will remind you, though. Trust me. Just look at your timeline here soon.
Indeed, they're a sponsor.
Yes.
Way to tie that together.
Well done. Well done. My Civic is going to roll up next to your Lambo, and we'll be at the same place at the same time. And look at how much more money you paid for that ride. Think about that.
Yeah, right.